Hey there, Reddit enthusiasts. Welcome to Woven Webs, where we bring you life and relationship stories ranging from the somewhat typical to those on the very fringe. Today, the story comes from George McMinty in the AITA subreddit category. I've been asked to change my son's name for money. What will happen if I don't change my son's name, even though it may cause him to lose an inheritance? She goes on. I'm 24 and I got pregnant while I was taking a gap year traveling. I met an older guy. I was 19 and he was 23. We had fun. I was working in a bar to make money while I explored his city. When I got pregnant, he lost interest really quickly. I understand, but I'm pro-choice and I chose not to terminate. So I went home and had my son. I also made sure to get child support. He could afford it, and he did fight it though. I had to prove paternity and everything. Through that, his parents found out, and they are well off. They have met my son, and they truly do seem to love him. They provided gifts for his birthday and Christmas. They've helped me with extra money so I could complete my university without going into debt. They've taken us on vacation with them so they could spend time with him. They aren't my biggest fans, but we are cordial to each other. 3 months ago, my son's father passed away. He got drunk at a bachelor party, tripped on the sidewalk and hit his head, and that was all she wrote. My son and I attended the funeral, and we spent a week in that city so his grandparents could see him. His family approached me with an offer. They had no other children or grandchildren, and their son was only 28, so he had lots of time to provide them legitimate kids. They did not say this, I'm just assuming. So they never thought about my son's name. They said that if I changed his surname to theirs legally, they would make him their primary heir. I think this is dumb. He is their only grandchild, and they would deny him an inheritance because of his last name? I said I'd consider it to be polite, and I've left it at that. I actually have a pretty good life as it is. My family's been very supportive, and because of the whole court thing, my son's father had to have life insurance with him as the beneficiary. Would it be nice for my kid to get a big sum of money? Yes. Do I want him to have the surname of a man who didn't want him, see him, or love him? No. So I've been talking to my family about it, and a few of them think I'm being an asshole for giving up this kind of money for my son. It's generational wealth, and I'm making this decision based on emotion. I think they're assholes for thinking money is the only thing that matters. I think I'll tell my son's grandparents that they can talk to him about it when he's 16. He'll be old enough to understand the implications, but young enough to not be tied professionally to his last name. And their first response is, "You're the asshole." To hell with that, dude, but you're also kind of screwing your kids by not changing the name. That money's your child's future, and guess what they'll probably want regardless of y'all's beef. First post by Champion Ether 5412. Yes, I completely understand not wanting him to have the name of a man who did not want him, but being practical, that's a lot of money, and if that's all they want, I would make the sacrifice for my son's sake. He shouldn't be punished for his dad being a bad guy. Judging A-holes post, I get where you're coming from in the sense that you aren't fond of him having a name that is tied to his dad who didn't want anything to do with him. However, I just want to give you some things to think about. His paternal grandparents did want a relationship with him and have helped out, so the last name is also tied to them, who do want him in their life. You are looking at this as if they will totally deny him an inheritance because of his last name, but they didn't say they would exclude him altogether. They said he would be the primary heir. Maybe that means without the last name that all property will be sold and all money will be split with other family members, charities, etc. But if he has their last name, that all properties and most money would go to him with little splitting of the money to anyone else? And you think that you can wait until he's 16, but that's 11-ish years away. What if something happens to them before then? And how do you think your son will feel if he doesn't get this and finds out that he could have had generational wealth and never would have to worry about money, and all you had to do was simply change his last name? Not number 44 responds, yeah, I'd be pissed off. You can always legally change it back with that amount of money. And another response, he's likely not to forgive you when he finds out what he missed out on. And for just a surname? Yeah, his dad didn't want him, but his grandparents want to involve him as a primary heir. This is a grand move on their part. It could change your son's life. Here's another vote that you're the asshole. What happens if the grandparents pass away before your son turns 16 and can decide? You could lose a very generous inheritance because of your resentment of his father. His grandparents have been kind to both you and your son. Do this for your son. What side of Chain writes, they are the assholes for tying money to a surname. If they want him to have the money, they should give it to him regardless of the last name. But in response to that, I'm curious what other strings that money will have. And continuing on that line, Hard Tyrant Dinosaur writes, I have to wonder, would the grandparents be putting forward the same proposal if she had a daughter? Would they pressure a granddaughter to adopt and keep the family name if she married, or even to hyphenate it? Or would they just view it as the end of the line and accept it? Also, her suggestion of let's wait until the son's 16 and let him decide seems like an okay one, but may end up with the grandparents applying overt and covert pressure to encourage him to change his name. And Eel Hugs writes in, you're not the asshole. I'm surprised this seems to be the minority view here. You're his only caring parent, and that was true even before his father died. It's sort of insulting that the grandparents would only consider leaving the inheritance if he shares their name. It feels as if they only consider him proper family if he shares their name, when ultimately he's their grandchild either way. All right, Reddit readers and listeners, what do you all think? She has some options. She could do nothing and see what the grandparents decide ultimately. Maybe they give him all or part of the money with no action on her part, no name change required. Or she can change the name and leave it that way, or she could change the name, inherit the money and change it back. What do you think? And thanks for listening.